Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into something you use every single day, but probably, never give a second thought to. The calendar.
Hmm.
We're asking, why are we stuck with a system where months randomly jump between 30 and 31 days? Why is February so short?
It's a great question.
Our mission today is to cut through all that historical noise and uncover the truth behind this mathematically chaotic system. And we'll also look at the surprisingly rational alternatives that were just, well, rejected.
To really understand the chaos of our present, we have to start with the deepest, most systemic chaos of the past. The foundational piece of this whole deep dive is the Annus Confusionis.
The Year of Confusion.
Exactly.
Which was 46 BC. And here is the shocking fact opener. 46 BC holds the record as the longest calendar year in recorded history. It lasted a staggering 445 days.
445 days. That's almost 3 full months longer than a standard solar year. And this wasn't an accident, It was an extreme, painful, but absolutely necessary fix engineered by Julius Caesar.
Just to get the clock working again.
Just to get it working again. It was all in preparation for his Julian calendar reform that started the next year, in 45 BC. It tells you immediately how catastrophically broken the old Roman system had become.
I mean, to need a 445-day year, the system before that must have been dysfunctional on a staggering level.
Yeah.
How was time even managed before Caesar stepped in?
Well, the original Roman Republican calendar was a real patchwork. It was a quasi-lunar system. It had 355 days spread over 12 months,
Okay.
and that included the short month, February, with 28 days. The core problem, well, the true solar year is about 365 and a quarter days. So the 355-day calendar it drifted out of alignment with the seasons almost immediately.
Right. So if they're using a 355-day year, how did they even try to keep the spring equinox happening in, the spring?
They used a system of what's called intercalation. To stay aligned, they were supposed to insert a leap month. It was called Mercedonius, the work month.
Mercedonius.
Yeah, and they'd add it every 2 or 3 years. Mercedonius added 27 days, making those leap years 377 or even 378 days long.
So the idea was good, I guess, keep the agricultural seasons reliable. But the execution, as you said, was fatally flawed because the power to insert or skip that month was, well, political dynamite.
Oh, absolutely. That power was held by the Pontifex Maximus.
The chief priest of Rome.
Exactly, the chief priest. And crucially, this was a highly political office. It was a position Caesar himself held, actually. The person in that office could abuse this power for enormous political gain.
I can just imagine the corruption. So if a politician was in office and wanted to stay there longer, they'd just lean on the Pontifex Maximus to add the leap month.
It lengthens the year, it lengthens their term.
And if they wanted to kneecap a rival,
You just skip the month, force the rival out of office early. It was rampant. And think about the effect this had on society. Dates were wildly unpredictable. If you lived outside Rome, trying to schedule, say, debt payments or legal proceedings, it was impossible.
because the local officials didn't even know what day it was.
They often had no idea. The system was just utterly unreliable because it required constant human political intervention.
It sounds like timekeeping basically became a weapon. So what made Julius Caesar the one person who could actually fix this mess? Why him?
It comes down to what you could call constitutional irresistibility. He was in a totally unique position. By 46 BC, he held the power of dictator, which let him alter the civil calendar.
Right.
And he was also the Pontifex Maximus, which gave him the authority to overrule any religious objection to the change. He was the only person in Roman history who had both the civil and the religious authority he needed to pull off a reform this big.
So he used his religious title to perform an act of, scientific and civil engineering, and he needed all of that combined power just to pull off the Annus Confusionis.
Absolutely. The system was so far out of sync that Caesar had to stretch the year to 445 days. And this wasn't one single event, it was a painful series of adjustments. He added the standard 23-day Mercedonius, and then on top of that, 2 separate extra intercalary months, one of 33 days and one of 34 days, just to drag the civil calendar back into alignment with the sun.
And while he's wrestling with this 445 days of administrative chaos, he's still running an empire. It's so important to remember that 46 BC wasn't just about dates.
That's right. I mean, that longest year saw incredible political and religious activity. Caesar established colonies for his veterans. He dedicated this massive temple to Venus Genitrix, emphasizing his divine lineage.
Mm-hmm.
He celebrated a monumental 40-day Gallic triumph that ended with the execution of his great rival Vercingetorix. And critically, that was the year he named his great-nephew Octavian as his heir. The calendar reform was part of a much bigger reordering of the Roman world.
So the Julian calendar that came out of all this was meant to be foolproof. It kept the 12-month structure, right, including the months named after him and his successor, but it shifted to a solar basis, 365 days, with a self-regulating leap day every 4 years. The goal was to remove politics from timekeeping forever.
And it worked brilliantly. I mean, it was the standard in the Western world for over 16 centuries. The reform was so thorough, but it did contain one very tiny, insidious flaw.
What was the Julian flaw?
Well, the average Julian year, 365.25 days, was still just a little bit too long compared to the actual tropical year.
How much longer?
The tropical year is 365.2422 days, so the difference is only about 11 minutes per year.
It seems like such a tiny error. But what's fascinating here is how that tiny discrepancy it compounded over time.
It really did. It caused the calendar to gain about 3 days every 4 centuries compared to the seasons. And this created a major growing problem for the religious authorities.
The calculation of Easter.
The calculation of Easter.
Because Easter is tied to the date of the March equinox.
Precisely. The early church, at the Council of Nicaea back in 325 AD, they fixed the ecclesiastical equinox on March 21st. But by 1582, the calendar had drifted so far that the real observed equinox was falling on March 11th.
Wow, so they were 10 full days out of sync.
10 days.
And that brings us to Pope Gregory III, who formalized the Gregorian calendar in 1582 to fix this. Now, this is the rule we still use today, and it's probably the most confusing part of our system. How did he fix that flaw?
He had to reduce the average year length, and the crucial adjustment was a tweak to the leap year rule. We still add a leap day every 4 years, but here's the complexity. You omit the leap day for years exactly divisible by 100.
Okay.
Unless they are also exactly divisible by 400.
So just to clarify that for everyone listening, the years 1700, 1800, and 1900, they all skipped their leap day. But the year 2000, which is divisible by 400, did not.
Exactly. That small tweak reduced the average year length to 365.2425 days, much, much closer to the true tropical year.
But adopting this new, more accurate system wasn't easy. It was incredibly slow and just full of political and religious drama.
Oh, the resistance was fierce. It was immediately adopted in Catholic countries, Spain, France.
Yeah.
But Protestant countries saw it as a papist plot. Britain and its colonies only switched in 1752.
And that meant they had to drop 11 days from the calendar.
Right. And that prompted actual riots. You had people in the streets demanding, give us back our 11 days.
Can you imagine going to sleep on September 2nd and waking up on September 14th?
And Russia was even later. They only converted after the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. What's so fascinating, though, is that the Julian calendar is still alive today.
It's currently 13 days behind the Gregorian, isn't it?
It is. Several branches of the Eastern Orthodox Church still use the Julian system to calculate their movable feasts. That's why their celebration of the Nativity, which is officially December 25th Julian, currently falls on January 7th for us.
And will until the year 2100.
Exactly.
So our current calendar is this unstable mashup of Roman law and medieval Christian tweaks designed just to save Easter. But by the time the industrial age hit, this calendar, even though it was astronomically sound, it was failing the needs of global commerce.
It completely failed because it was illogical for business. Critics argued the month was a wholly irrational division of time. How do you budget? How do you compare quarterly sales figures when months randomly have 28, 29, 30, or 31 days? It made bookkeeping a total nightmare.
And this commercial pressure gave rise to the push for modern calendar reform, something driven by efficiency and standardization. We're talking about the International Fixed Calendar.
This was the leading proposal. It was championed by a man named Moses Cotsworth, a railway advisor who was just obsessed with standardization. And his system was based on a 13-month solar calendar where every single month has exactly 28 days.
That sounds mathematically beautiful. 13 times 28 is 364 days.
The appeal was immense. It's a perennial calendar. Every month has exactly 4 weeks. Every quarter has exactly 91 days. And the huge selling point for business was that the same date always falls on the same day of the week every single year.
So the 1st is always a Sunday, the 17th is always a Tuesday, the 28th is always a Saturday. That's incredible standardization for things like payroll, rent, quarterly reporting.
And that's why it had massive support from industry leaders. George Eastman, the founder of Kodak, was its biggest lobbyist. He actually adopted this 13-month system for Codex internal records from 1928 all the way until 1989.
Wow, until 89.
Yes, because it made accounting and sales comparisons standardized and predictable.
So if it was so mathematically perfect and had such powerful corporate backing, why aren't we using it right now? What was the fatal flaw?
The flaw was the sun. A year is 365 and a quarter days, not 364. To account for the extra day, the system introduced what it called the World Day.
Peace Day, sometimes.
Peace Day, right. It was added at the end of the year. But this day was not assigned a weekday status. It was a blank. And during leap years, a second blank day was added.
So after the last Saturday of the year, you have World Day, and then the next day, January 1st, would be Sunday, starting the week cycle over again. So that means the 7-day cycle gets interrupted.
And that interruption was the breaking point. It fundamentally offended the religious tradition rooted in the biblical 7-day week.
It's amazing how this whole issue keeps coming back to power and control over time. We saw Caesar with his dual authority, Gregory with the papacy, and now religious institutions just pushing back against this interruption.
Exactly. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, major calendar changes almost always coincide with some kind of power consolidation. Look at Constantine in the 4th century. He deliberately established Sunday as the primary day of worship.
Shifting away from the traditional Saturday Sabbath.
Exactly. And this wasn't just theological, it was political. It was about using the standardization of time to create a new, unified religious identity for the whole empire.
And the 13-month system introduced a deeper, maybe more esoteric fight over the number 13 itself. Sources suggest 13 has a hidden, ancient history rooted in natural harmony.
It does. Many ancient cultures saw 13 as sacred because it connects the lunar and the solar worlds. The moon cycles 13 times in a solar year. Women typically experience 13 menstrual cycles a year. Human gestation is approximately 13 lunar months, so the 13-month calendar aligns civil time with these natural biological rhythms.
But now the number 13 is just systematically demonized. We see triskaidekaphobia, the fear of 13 everywhere. Buildings skipping the 13th floor, the superstition around Friday the 13th. Is there concrete evidence for the systematic stigmatization of this number, or is that more speculative?
Well, the sources argue that this was highly intentional. It happened most prominently as patriarchal and solar-centric power structures consolidated. By making 13 unlucky, they effectively severed humanity's connection with natural lunar and feminine cycles.
Disconnecting society from the rhythms that tied it to the natural world.
Right. So the religious opposition to the 13-month calendar wasn't just about the World Day. It was also, on some level, a rejection of a system that honored lunar and natural cycles over the established solar Christian week.
But the main stated reason was the week interruption.
That was the official reason, yes. Both the 13-month international fixed calendar and a modified 12-month world calendar were killed because of this. The Vatican II Council in 1962 officially stated that the Catholic Church had reservations about any system that would interrupt the even, continuous succession of the 7-day week.
And that one pronouncement effectively ended it.
It ended all serious chances of global calendar reform.
It's astounding that industrial efficiency and mathematical elegance could be defeated by the insistence on an unbroken 7-day cycle.
But despite the global dominance of the Gregorian calendar, some 13-month systems do still exist in the world today. What's fascinating is the Ethiopian calendar. It's the official civil calendar in Ethiopia.
Right, that's a true 13-month solar calendar. 12 months of 30 days, plus a short 13th month pagum that has 5 or 6 days.
And it uses a Julian-style leap year system. It adds a leap day every 4 years without any of those complex exceptions. It's also famous for being 7 to 8 years behind the Gregorian year.
Because the Ethiopian Church calculates the date of the Annunciation differently.
That's right. But it's proof that a 13-month system can and does work for modern civil life.
We've also seen failed attempts at radical calendar change, like the French Republican calendar.
That was an extreme attempt to impose pure rationality. They abolished the 7-day week entirely, favoring 10-day weeks called decades, 30-day months, and entirely new month names. That was too radical, too disruptive to deeply ingrained traditions. You just can't force people to rewire centuries of tradition overnight.
And Napoleon quickly abolished it.
He did.
So what does this all mean for us? Our calendar resists change because of tradition and religion, but other time standards are actually highly malleable.
Precisely. We redefine time elsewhere constantly. Time zones change. You see proposals to move entire regions like New York to Atlantic time. Even the base unit of the second is constantly being refined. We move from defining the second by the Earth's rotation to defining it by the frequency of the cesium-133 atom.
We moved from the sun to an atom.
We did.
The ultimate takeaway here seems to be that our calendar, the system that governs our daily lives and global commerce, is not some scientific constant. It's a human, political, and regulatory construct. It's an unstable mashup of ancient lunar cycles, Roman politics, and medieval Christianity.
We live by this chaotic 12-month calendar, but nature and ancient wisdom, they seem to remember the older, more mathematically perfect rhythms of the number 13.
So if we know that human biological rhythms, agricultural cycles, and ancient spiritual traditions align perfectly with a 13-month, 28-day system, a system that major corporations adopted for efficiency, what measurable effects, whether physical, mental, or spiritual, does modern society suffer by continuing to force our lives into this mathematically chaotic and politically imposed 12-month structure?